Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Oh, we're just having a great day. We're just waiting for David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers, to join me. Trying to call him. He said he'd be here. Anyway, we're trying to get him on, but I don't know. Maybe he is having some computer problems. But we will be trying our darndest to get him going. I'm trying to make a call, but anyway, joining me tonight, is a good thing. We got some good stories to tell, and I do not disappoint as always. Just give me a second here. I didn't want to be too late, so we are doing the thing. Oh, geez. Of course, my phone died. Wouldn't you know it? My phone dies as I try to make the call. Well, I guess we're just going to have to wing it. Hello to everybody. Anyway, we got Sunset Dreamer in the house, and we got Deborah L. Smith. Thank you for being on tonight. Yes, and Chris Smith too. Thank you. And interesting. Yes, thank you. We got Nina the Mystic, and Witchy Moon. Yeah, there you are. Lucky Stone. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. Anyway, it's going to be a good night. And David will be here shortly. Chloe's in the house. Witchy Moon. Nina the Mystic. If you haven't gotten a great show that we did on Nina's channel here recently, that was on Sunday. Go on over there and check it out. And we did one on Tesla and the time machine and Trump. It was really good. I mean, I had to go home and there's no link. Where's the link? Oh, crap. Okay. I don't know where the link is. It was in the thing. It says the link here. I resent it. Anyway, I will resend it. Copy. Yep, it's right there in the email. I am sending it out. It's right there in the email. So there you go. There's the link. Special delivery. It's right there. I can see it. He replied. There we go. I don't know why it's not there, but it's showing it on my email that I sent it out. So there you go. Sometimes those things happen. Computer glitches. But anyway, while he's getting ready to come on, we're going to be talking about the Nez Perce Syrian Indians as we have, and we're going to finish up our story like we did before. There he goes. I knew that link was there. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hawkeye Two Feathers. David Null, thank you for being here. Are you alive?
Did you get me now?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was sitting here like
No, you replied to the email. And the link, it says link for show, and I'm looking at the email. It says same link that I just sent you. And
hang on.
It's right on the top. It says link for show, and there it is.
Hang on. Oh no, did I turn off the wrong one?
There it is. It's all good. You're on now. Who cares? That's what matters, that you made it.
I had it on twice somehow. I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm always late, it seems to be. And I welcome you along with Robert. And we thank you for coming, and we bless you, and thank you, and hope that you're in your world, things are going well. Okay, I gave my intro. I'm here. Finally, golly Moses. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Like I said, Elderberry's in the house along with Witchy Moon. We introduced everybody. That's that's plenty okay. Those things happen. Like I said, I was like, huh, he replied to the email, so he got the link, and then I checked it, and I'm like, oh, well, anyway, let's move on, right? That's all I can say. We are going to go back in time.
Can you see my T-shirt?
Says, let's see.
Kindness wins.
Yes.
Is it backwards?
Nope.
Kindness wins. So that's the motto for today. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. There we go. You're back. There he is. Elderberry, what's up? Kindness wins. Yes. Make that into a mantra or what do you call it? Somehow. Anyway, or a affirmation. Kindness wins affirmation. Yeah. Anyway, we are going to go
one too. Kindness wins. That's a good one.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, we are going to move into the past. Let me take you back to a time when the land was wild and free. And let's see, hang on a second. I got to get my Nez Perce stuff up because, I got a lot of good stuff on there. And so we're going to go back to this. And get up here. Some of this stuff. Actually, we're going to go back to this guy. And we're going to start off with old Joseph. That's who we're going to start out with. Because old Joseph starts out the story. And if you don't know anything about the Savagely, am I late to the party? Nope, you're right on time. We're a little late ourselves, so yeah, that's all right. I started a little bit late. I was waiting. I'm thinking, man, usually if there's something going on, he emails me, or he calls or something. But my phone died. I was trying to call. I'm like, yeah, this ain't working. Anyway, got to move on. Anyway, we're gonna present and share the screen.
It was weird how it happened, I gotta say.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Don't worry about it. Well, no dwelling on the past. We're moving to the future. We're going to tell this great story. So we're going to take you back in time. Sit back in your easy chair and grab yourself a coffee cup because we're going back to the time back when the people of the Nez Perce were free, when the rivers ran through the borders and the mountains echoed the songs of what they called themselves the Nimitpu, which is the people, as most tribes do. So we're going back to 1871. And this guy, the great leader, Chief Joseph the Elder, he died. And what did he tell his son before he passed? He made his son, Chief Joseph, the one we all kind of know, made him a promise. He says, never sell the bones of your father and your mother. He meant the land. That Walla Walla Valley in northeastern Oregon. And to the Nez Perce, it wasn't just home, it was sacred ground, full of their ancestors, their spirits, and their identity. Because that's where you plant your roots. But then the U.S. government came along, and they had other plans. Just a few years before that, in 1863, which was pretty much during the Civil War, it had they'd redrawn the boundaries of the Nez Perce Reservation, and all the bands didn't agree. That was the problem. They didn't. The white man didn't understand the difference in bands. Each tribe. There might have been 100 tribes, and 10 tribes said, "Okay, we'll sign," but the other ones didn't agree, and the white man didn't care. He says, "Oh, you're this tribe, you signed, great. All your people signed." That's how it works. And this treaty was called the Steel Treaty. And by many, they surrendered over 6 million acres of Nez Perce land. and Chief Joseph's band had never signed it. So when Joseph the younger inherited his father's leadership, he also inherited an impossible burden. Well, and that was to defend his people's land with honor and yet avoid bloodshed if possible, because he was kind of a peaceful guy. But by 1877, tensions were really getting to a breaking point. And this is where things really were going bad. They were having treaties, and I'm going to be reading. I did a little research out of this book here, and this is the Nez Perce Indians. Opening of the Northwest. It should have been called The Taking of the Northwest. That's what it should have been called.
And the murder of a people.
Yeah, well, it wasn't, we just talk about them as the Nez Perce, but what happened is they were having these, treaties and things like that going on, and the white man literally put all the Indians together. And, so anyway, they got all these Indians together, and the railroads were coming through. And it says, thus he planned to have the Indians vacated in their regions. The Utamala, the Walla Wallas, the Colvilles valleys, as well as the Spokane and the Palouse counties, and the Yakima River Valley, through which they projected the Northern Railroad would run. They wanted all the Indians out of there. And then they wanted them to, they tried to explain it. Explaining the reservation more fully, tracing their boundaries on this map and describing the payments that the government would make them and give to the tribes and the land that they sold. And the Indians didn't understand the selling of land and stuff like that. So with the exception of a lawyer and a few of the Nez Perce headmen, those homelands were untouched by the Stevens guy who was making these proposals. And anyway, there was a big hostile feeling because this Lieutenant Kip noted on one of the evenings, adding that when Lieutenant Gracie attempted to visit the Cayuse camp, a group of young warriors stood in his way and motioned them to leave. In addition to having to surrender their lands, none of the tribes liked the prospect of being forced to live together. See, they were rounding up all the tribes, not just the Nez Perce. They just considered an Indian, and they got the biggest group of Indians, and they were going to round them all up, and they were just going to put them on one big reservation.
Yeah, they didn't have Guantanamo Bay back then.
That's right. And it says they projected them, forced them to live together like a single people. Few of the Columbia River bands were proposed to move in with the Yakimas and were even present at the council, and no one could speak for them. Some of them were Salish, and some were Safarians, and some were Yakimas, and they wanted none of them on their lands. Similarly, the Cayuse, the Walla Wallas, and the Unimas had no intention of moving onto Nez Perce land. And few of the Nez Perce looked forward to happily to welcoming them. And so, they sat there, and Chief Joseph and the Chief Plenty Bears with the Walla Walla and the Grand Rollin River districts were concerned that the treaty called for them to sell their parts of the Nez Perce domain. Nevertheless, another lawyer conferred privately with the commissioners at night. And and we'll just move on here. It says, with some of the headmen, they won their approval of the treaty. On June 7th, they got up in the council meeting and played the role of politician and diplomat for Stevens, making a long speech about the history of the Indians and the white man. And of course, people were whatever, they were mad. Well, anyway, the tribes were mad, and all the Cayuse, including Stickdust, which was another chief, made known their opposition to abandoning their own country and moving in with the Nez Perce. And the Tetua, the young chief of the Utamala Valley, who had already lived through many crises, was angry. So anyway, these people were getting literally kicked around. And my point is with all of this stuff is, that, you lived on this land. Each generation, like this guy here, they have their eyes on this land. My son, never forget my dying words. This country holds your father's body. Never sell the bones of your father and your mother. You're tied to the land. Thousands of acres where you've lived from generation to generation. And a white man comes through and he says, I want to put a railroad there. And we're going to chop down these trees and we're going to put some houses over here. And yeah. You guys, you're all Indians. Get together. We're going to put you on some land over yonder there, and you all can live together as a big happy family. Now, these Indians have warred with each other, killed their relatives off, scalped their brothers in arms. Basically, you're not a Nez Perce, and you're a Yakima, or you're a Salish, or some they might have had good relations. You're a Walla Walla. Then I'm, something else. And now it's like saying y'all got to live in this one little trailer house and make the best of it, because that's what we're going to give you.
Well, that's like putting the Blood and the Crips together.
Yeah, let's round them all up, put them on a little bitty tiny island, and then see what happens. They're going to fight amongst themselves. They're not going to be happy. They're going to say, well, whose land is this? Well, this is Nez Perce's land. You got to do what we say. I mean, you're creating a mess, a big mess, because a lot of these people, hey, I lived over there for, my relatives and everything for 1,000 years. And now you're telling me I can pick it up. I got to go over to Nez Perce land where I used to fight these people for this land. And I got to go live on their land. Are you kidding me? You'd be devastated. You would be mad. You would.
They'd have to kill me.
Yeah, exactly. If they showed up and said, you've been living here for 500 years and my family's buried out back. No, we don't care. We're going to put a big highway through that cemetery you got. But don't worry. We're putting you on a reservation. The government wants you to live by their rules, and we're going to give you a little bit of money. So as we move on, because we want to finish it up tonight. So we're gonna move through this story pretty good. Hopefully we get done in this hour. By 1877, the tensions reached a breaking point, and the government ordered all non-treaty Nez Perce to relocate, and of course all these other tribes to relocate to the reduced reservation at Lapawai, Idaho, immediately. The deadline was, was going to be impossible. And then Chief Joseph tried to buy time. He tried to avoid war, but when a few of those young Nez Perce warriors, angry over the past murders of their kin, killed 4 white settlers. And of course, that was all it took. The U.S. Army came marching in. And just like that, the Nez Perce War had begun. Now, you remember, this is in 1877. This is after Custer had been, cut down, and they'd chased the Sioux pretty much right out of the country. 1877, most of the Indians had been subdued in most of the lands across the country. And now it's time for the Nez Perce, because now I would imagine, do you agree with me with the statement that there's no more Indians? We got rid of them all, and they're all passive now. We can do whatever we want with the land. We put them all on reservations, see? And that wasn't the truth. The Nez Perce were still living free, even though there was treaties signed, and there was just nobody out there that far west to chase these Indians around. Okay, now this wasn't like other wars. This was a people. There were about 750 of them, only a third of whom were warriors. and they were on the run, pursued by a vastly larger army for over 1,400 miles, because their mission, well, they wanted to, get the heck out of there, because remember, they were going to be rounded up. For 1,400 miles across Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. Of course, through that, the Nez Perce fought. They retreated and survived using brilliant tactics and their deep knowledge of the land. Well, it was really hard to fight these places because, it's in the mountains. Remember, last week or the week before, we looked at these mountains, and it's going to be hard traveling, really hard traveling.
And they knew they had lived there before, so they knew where to set traps. They knew where to hide. They knew a lot because they were Indians.
Yeah.
That sounds like a simple statement, but they knew everything that they knew was natural to them, except being chased.
Yeah, and they knew the trail. They were bringing about 2,000 horses with them. They had 750 to 800 people. Well, anyway, they got to this place. They fought and won a battle at Whitebird Canyon. They held their ground at the Clearwater and escaped from the trap at Big Hole, but at a terrible cost, losing women and children from a surprise attacks from the army, the military, chasing them. At every turn, they sought peace, but were met with soldiers. Their goal, what was their goal? To reach Canada, where Sitting Bull, as they would believe, was up there. Well, at this point, he was up there. They probably didn't know it. They were heading west, figuring that, I imagine they believed that the Sioux and people, the Sioux and the Crow and were still out there. This is only a year later. Maybe some word had got through, but it's hard to believe when, word travels slowly, put it that way. They wanted to reach Canada, or where Sitting Bull and a few of the Lakota had found refuge after the Battle of Little Bighorn. Yeah, I'm sure they found that out sooner or later. And by October 1877, just 40 miles from the Canadian border, cold and starving and exhausted, the Nez Perce stopped near Bear Paw Mountain. After a 5-day siege, the U.S. Army and Chief Joseph saw no way out. Okay, but there is, they battled a long way through. They went through these the mountains, and each battle was crazy like. So, hang on. Let's talk a little bit about the battles. Okay, let me look this up for a second. But what do you think these people had in their mind? Hawkeye, what do you think?
They wished that dadgun white people would leave them alone.
Yeah.
Because they didn't understand any of the white man's deals. The idea of boundary lines and property lines and all that kind of stuff, that just was not in their vocabulary, literally. And so, it was a great disservice, by the white men, not only in wiping them out and chasing them and all that way and everything, but it was by honestly not understanding truly what the way of life of the Indian was. If they understood it, and Chief Joseph with them, they probably would just leave them alone, let them go, and it'll be okay. Nope, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. Oh. But their politicians have a way of being that even today. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, there we go. We got Veronica's in the house.
Hey, Veronica.
Haven't seen her in a while. Welcome. Thank you for showing up tonight. We got a great story, and I was going to have you on. We got to get you on the show again. It's been a while. My goodness. Anyway, yay, there we go. Anyway, we are trucking right along. Okay, the Battle of Whitebird Canyon was the opening battle of the Nez Perce, and it was both fought brilliantly by the Nez Perce, because remember, they won that battle, and it was kind of embarrassing for the U.S. Army, because, you know, the Army doesn't like to lose. That's kind of one of those things. It's let's see, where are we here? Anyway, the Stevenson guy, he let's see, let me get this straight here. He wanted to make, he decided, because the tribes were fighting so much, he tried to create a third reservation for the Walla Wallas, the Cayuse, and the Utamas. He also had intimidated that he would make the Nez Perce reservation smaller, since space on it was no longer required for the other three tribes. I mean, talk about, it's like, we're going to give you this space, and then we're going to cut it into pieces and give these guys some space. And I tell you, you know, I guess they knew that they had to, divide it up, because you couldn't put these Indians together. They seemed to fight amongst themselves. At least that's what I could understand. And they were headed over to the Flathead country, and they were going through these passes and things like that. And I'm trying to look up these sites here, but anyway, the military was, and this here is Chief Joseph. Military was defeated, and if I can find that one, we can read it on the paper, because that's where it seems to be the best. And share it. So anyway, they retreated. The Nez Perce. Okay, here's Whitebird Canyon. 34 U.S. cavalry soldiers were killed and 2 wounded, with 2 volunteers wounded. In contrast, only 3 Nez Perce warriors were wounded, and the Nez Perce warriors retrieved 63 carbines and many pistols and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. They had won despite being outnumbered 2-1 and fighting uphill with inferior weapons. As for Chief Joseph, he may have fought in the battle, but he was not a war leader. Yeah, Chief Joseph was more of a peace guy, more of a speaker. The Nez Perce knew that victory was only temporary, and thus began their desperate fighting retreat across 1,700 miles of Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. 250 Nez Perce warriors and 500 women and children, along with 2,000 head of horses and other livestock, set off towards Montana, seeking assistance from the Crow, as I was saying before. This is a crazy, crazy trip. I mean, you know, these people, 500 women and children. You know, we can't get women to walk a mile, more or less a child. And then, you know, you got 2,000 head of horses. Were they riding all these horses or not? I don't know. Or if you guys have been through Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, you got to remember, there was no roads, and it would have been hard trailing. You know, anyway, the map shows below the incredible fighting journey from their homeland through the Bitterroot Mountains and across Yellowstone National Park.
In some places, it was treacherous. Okay.
Yes.
I don't mean just, you know, no, I mean, you know, fall off the mountain into a gorge treacherous.
Yes. You know, they outmaneuvered the U.S. cavalry for quite a long time. As you can see by this map, you know, they had their battles, but they went down, Battle of Big Hole, all these different battles here. They ended up down and into, let's go to Yellowstone Park. So this is what I was saying before too, is they were like people out of time at this point. I mean, the Yellowstone National Park had already been created. There was hotels out there and stuff, and people were staying at these hotels, and here comes 2,000 horses and a 700-800 Indians coming across. What are you thinking? You know what I mean? You're thinking this is out of a TV show or something.
Yeah. Do I have to pay extra money for that? Is there popcorn with this show?
Yeah, exactly. And the Indians didn't care if they came through they're like, we're not paying the toll fee going through here. But anyway, and if you've been to Yellowstone Park, it's not an easy ride through there either. I mean, it's up and down, and you got to go around the volcano stuff, the hot springs, and you can't just walk through all of that. I mean, it's mountainous, and it's a trip. These people were on the move, and I tell you what, they must have been in shape. Like I said, here the U.S. Cavalry followed them. They had the old Big Hole, and then they stopped because it was too hard on the cavalry. But the problem was, this is what the problem was. Problem was, there was a thing called a telegraph. And so these soldiers just rode back, telegraphed over, and the new military came out and followed them over here. That was the bad part. They just used the telegraph lines, and you can't outrun a telegraph. And that's where things kind of go bad, because you just can't outrun the telegraph. Anyway, they were only 40 miles south of the Canadian border, believing they had shaken off their pursuers when General Miles led a surprise attack on September 30th. There was a fierce battle following a siege in freezing weather, and Joseph, who was in charge of protecting the camps during the long retreat, said his band could have escaped if they had left their wounded, the old women and children behind. But that was the but. Joseph went ahead and he negotiated to allow his people to return to the reduced reservation in Idaho. These words attributed to Chief Joseph moved me greatly when I first read them almost 50 years ago. He said, "Tell General Howard I know his heart. What he told me before, I have it in my heart. I am tired of fighting. Our chiefs are killed." And so, because Chief Looking Glass was one of the big chiefs who made it, most of their chiefs were actually killed off in the Battle of Bear Paw. It was a really bad battle. They were in the valley. The troops snuck up on them, and a lot of them were, killed before, they knew what happened. And they fought hard. Anyway, Looking Glass is dead. To Hula Hula, Solt is dead. The old men are all dead. It is the young men who say yes or no. He who led on this young man is dead. It is cold, and we have no blankets. The little children are freezing to death. My people, some of them, have run away to the hills and have no blankets, no food. No one knows where they are, and perhaps freezing to death. I want to have time to look for my children, to see how many I can find. Maybe I shall find them among the dead. Hear me, my chiefs, I am tired. My heart is sick and sad from where the sun now stands. I will fight no more forever. But Chief Joseph did not speak those English words. His speech had to be translated. And who was the translator? None other than the civilian, Ad Chapman, who had fired upon the truce party almost 4 months earlier, setting in motion the Nez Perce War. Ain't that terrible? The translator you have is the guy who, was trying to kill you a little while ago.
Yep.
I mean, I feel bad for these people because, here we captured your camp, we killed all your people, we killed all your warriors, your young, your leaders, we killed the old men and all your women and children. Actually, they said about 250 of them escaped and went to Canada and met up with Chief Sitting Bull. So this here is second from left, which would be this guy is Chief Joseph. And Ad Chapman is at the far right. This is this guy. That's the guy.
Yeah, he looks like a weasel, don't he?
He does. I wouldn't want to meet up with him.
He looks like a weasel.
He does. He does.
He needs an arrow in the back. I'm sorry. That was violent.
Oh, Chief Joseph's famous speech and ended the tale in there. But there were more betrayals to come, including 7 years of exile. That would become Oklahoma. Yes, so they packed all these people up and shipped them to Oklahoma. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
Anyway, let me clear my throat here. Okay. General of the Army, Sherman, he violated the surrender terms, overruling and allowing some of the Nez Perce to return to Idaho. And Chief Joseph and his followers, well, they, were taken to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and held as prisoners of war for 8 months in a swampy bottomland. Of course, you take them to the worst land. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That was the thing. Anyway, they described them as 400 miserable. They were held there for 8 months. 400 miserable, helpless, emancipated specimens of humanity, subjected for months to martial atmosphere of river bottom. Chief Joseph, he survived. He traveled to Washington, D.C. to plead for his people to be allowed to return to Idaho, or at least be given land in Indian Territory. He met with the president and the Congress, believe it or not. He said, "When I think of our condition, my heart is heavy. I see men of my own race treated as outlaws and driven from country to country or shot down like animals. I know that my race must change. We cannot hold our own with the white man as we are. We only ask an even chance to live as other men live. We ask to be recognized as men. We ask the same law work alike on all men." That was another thing. The law just never worked the same. The white man could kill off an Indian for doing something bad, and the white man, they would be like, slap him on the wrist and say, "Hey, don't do that again." But if an Indian just as merely, killed your cow, they would hang him. It was terrible.
Well, you know one reason why?
Why?
Because since they moved to the reservations, they weren't American citizens. They still aren't. They are sovereign citizens. And so therefore, whether they were Indian or not, they knew they weren't the same. So they could pick on them, do whatever they wanted, because the Indians were of another, like another country.
Yes.
So they were treated as such. So you come off the reservation, and even today, you're fair pickings, but you come on the reservation, we're going to get your butt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, when it really boils down to it, and he says we must change. And he says if an Indian breaks the law, punish him by the law. If white man breaks the law, punish him also. That's all he wanted. He says, "Let me be a free man." I swear someday these words are going to ring true, and we're going to be saying the same darn things.
We are now.
Well, this is true.
We are saying it now. You know, we want to be free people. We don't want to be under the thumb of all, dumb rules and regulations and idiot government stuff. I mean, the population of the United States has become a band of Indians.
Well, yeah.
We have. We just, that's why we're the soul tribe. You know what I mean? Because we are a tribe of peoples, and the government is still trying to round us up and put us in our place. They still are to this day.
That is so true. So let me read this out, because people, you need to embed this in your brain. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work, free to trade, where I choose, free to choose my own teachers, free to follow the religion of my fathers, free to think and talk and act for myself, and I will obey every law or submit to the penalty. Whenever the white man treats the Indian as they treat each other, then we will have no more wars. We shall all be alike, brothers of one father and one mother, with one sky above us and one country around us and one government for all. That was well said. I tell you, these guys were very good orators. They knew, how to say things. I mean, really, what he said is what our Constitution and our Bill of Rights is all about. To be a free man, to travel where we want, to stop, free to work, free to trade. He just described our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Free to follow your own religion, free to think, free to talk, that's your freedom of speech, your act for myself, obey every law, or submit the penalty. That's really what it's all about. They want to be treated like each other. And he says, if we can do all these things, then we'll have no more wars. Anyway, from Chief Joseph's speech at Lincoln Hall, Washington, D.C. in 1879. That was the same year the U.S. government had argued in federal court in the case of Pocahontas Chief Standing Bear. The first peoples were not citizens and even claimed they were not persons. But federal judge Elmer Dooley ruled that Indians were people with the personhood, but not the citizenry rights and freedoms promised by the Constitution. See, you were right.
Yeah.
They didn't have citizens. They weren't citizens.
Now, let me bring this up, too, because that's the issue right now with the illegal immigrants. They are not citizens, just like the Native Americans. They're human beings. What did it say? They were people with the personhood, but not citizenry. Yep. And so, the same thing is true today. All these folks that crossed the line without doing it right, they did it wrong. They broke the law, and therefore, just like the Native Americans, you're a personage and we get you, but you ain't a citizen, so adios, period. Mm-hmm. Without being rude, without being crude, that line right there applies to what's going on right now.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's true. And then I think Trump's picking up on this because he says, hey, people are like, you see it in the news. Well, they got rights. And he says, no, they really don't, because they're illegal aliens. They're not citizens. They don't have the rights under the Constitution like you and I do, because they weren't born here. They're not part, and I get that. I get that, but they are indigenous people. These people, I'm talking about these people. They're indigenous people, and they should have their own nation, but we're stealing it. So where does that leave them?
But you see, because of that, they want to be their own nation still. Yeah. That means that every time they leave the reservation, they are in a foreign country.
That's true.
I mean, every time they walk out of that reservation, they're in a foreign country. They're in America, but it ain't theirs. I mean, for, even though their ancestors roamed the plains, they, once they step out of that reservation, subject to federal law and scrutiny, and the
Yep.
white man leaving you dead on the side of the road.
Yep, exactly. So what Chief Joseph's people do, they were allowed to leave Leavenworth, not for Idaho, but to be relocated on a small reservation near modern-day Tequanda, Oklahoma. So they couldn't even go back to their own country. Conditions in this hot country were little improvement over Leavenworth, and many died of epidemic diseases during their 7-year exile there. I swear, sometimes these guys put them there because they knew they were going to die,
Yep.
and they knew, you're taking a mountainous people who live at, 6,000 foot elevation, and you're putting them in lowlands and desert conditions, and, where everything they knew is not there. And then you're going to tell them, you got to learn our religion. You got to cut your hair. You got to teach your kids a new language. You can't be living in a teepee. You got to have a regular house. You got to raise crops. You got to learn how to farm. These people weren't farmers. They were hunters. They were gatherers. They migrators, and now all of a sudden you're teaching them something totally different that their ancestors and them never experienced. I feel bad. It says here, never to return home. In 1885, Joseph and his followers were finally granted permission to return to the Northwest. They were allowed to settle in Colville Reservation in Washington at the town of Nespleen. In 1899, the government finally offered Joseph's people allotments on the Nez Perce Reservation in Idaho, but the Nez Perce there, who had accepted the 1869 treaty, what does it say here? Had converted to Presbyterianism, and Chief Joseph.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a religion, isn't it?
Yes. Presbyterian.
So, yeah, I don't even know. I don't know what a Presbyterian is. It's a Catholic kind of thing or something. So,
sort of.
Yeah. So isn't that crazy? They converted all the people to a religion, and then Chief Joseph declined, still hoping to return to his home in Walla Walla Valley in Northeast Oregon. Well, that's kind of crazy. See how they converted these people? These people didn't believe in that for 1,000 years, and all of a sudden you come in and say, "Here's a new religion," and then they all convert. That's wrong. That ain't even what our Constitution is all about. It's freedom of religion, not force of the religion. It's all backwards. Anybody agree with that? Oh, anyway, by 1901, the Colville Reservation had been cut in two again. Cut it down. The white man needs more land. With the government neglecting to pay an agreed sum for the northern half, the southern half was open for mineral entries and prospectors to stream in. A visitor to the mining camp within 2 miles of Chief Joseph's teepee said that the herds of tribal ponies were startled twice daily by rock blasting. There were about 1,000 Nez Perce in Nespleen, of which 127 were of Chief Joseph's band. His band were given regular rations of food and clothes and agricultural implements, but they had to ask permission to leave the reservation. Remember, you're right, because the reservation's their sovereign land and they're moving into a different country. But they just don't say it like that. Leading an observer to construe them is still particular prisoners of war. Yeah, because they were conquered.
Right.
Anyway, people don't understand it because it's all about the wording. See, they say, they had to ask permission. Well, if you go to Canada from here, you're going to have permission. You're going to have to, you know what I mean? So anyhow, says here, Presbyterianism was formed during the English Civil War and traces their roots to the Church of Scotland. Thank you, Lucky. Thank you for that. Anyway, Joseph had 9 children, 5 girls, 4 boys, and they were all dead. One had died after the move to Nestling. 2 had died in Indian Territory, and the rest had died in Idaho. The chief showed a visitor a picture of one of the daughters who had grown to womanhood and been married, telling of what a good girl she had been. In 1903, Joseph was invited to speak in Seattle by Professor Edmund Mealy of the University of Washington. He took Joseph to the football game, some 4,000 cheering spectators, and Joseph seemed baffled by the game, but enjoyed it while smoking a cigar he had been offered. The old chief was exhausted that evening when he was set to talk at the packed Seattle theater. Through a translator, he said, "My heart is far away from here. I would like to be back in my old home in Walla Walla County. My father and children are buried there, and I want to go back there to die. My white father promised me long ago that I could go back home, but the white men are big liars." It was in Seattle that Edward Curtis took his photographs of Chief Joseph. Okay. And there is Chief Joseph himself. I mean, this is what really gets me. And I hope you people enjoy this part because, these people were still native wild back in the day. And yet we had technology of photographs, writers, recordings, papers, that they could take a picture of this guy, Chief Joseph, who was born in a teepee in the wild, hunting buffalo as a child, battling the army. And here you can see him in a picture that looks like it was taken yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It really tells me in my head that it wasn't really that long ago. I mean, we think about it like it was hundreds of years ago, but it really wasn't. I mean, this picture was probably taken in the early 1900s, late 1800s. I mean, it had to be. So the chief had visited with the third U.S. president, his third U.S. president that year, having previously met with Rutherford Hayes, William McKinley. He visited Theodore Roosevelt in Washington, D.C. So Theodore Roosevelt was president. He met with Theodore Roosevelt. I mean, just think, how modern is catching up with the past at this point. It's the clash. This is what amazes me about history, is that, this guy was the last of the natives, one of the last living free. And now all of a sudden he's meeting with Theodore Roosevelt, who carried the big stick and made all the national parks, one of our most famous presidents whose face is on Mount Rushmore. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know if it excites you guys that much or not, but it does.
And you know what? To sort of add to that, there is a picture, and but he lived during the time of the first movies.
Yeah.
And it's very possible at some point where he was with other, he might have been. Did he ever go with the Wild West show?
No, he did not.
Okay. Well, but my point is that he might, with all of his movings and things and this and that, in that, hey, Chief Joseph, come over here, and during that time. But my point is he could have had been on film, actually, not just a picture.
Yeah. Let's see.
could have been.
Anyway, okay. Let's move on with this. Okay, so anyway, like I said, he asked the president there to go back to the Walla Walla Valley for his people in northeastern Oregon. His pleas were never answered, and Joseph died in 1904 at the age of 64, which is pretty old. And then it's also, I'm amazed, 1904, in 1904, we had trains that went across the country. We had telegraph lines, and people were living in cities, and cars were running around, and it's just
well. But he met Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
But he was dead in 1904.
Yeah, President Roosevelt was around from let's see, what was it here? Theodore Roosevelt was the 26th president of the United States from 1901 to 1909. So there you go.
I thought it was later than that, but thank you very much for clearing that up.
Yep, thank you, Lucky.
So he met him and died, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. He was getting old by that point. The Nez Perce were relying on seasonal substance like cycles of fish, game, resources. Lifestyle required a lot of undisturbed open land. That was the big problem. They wanted this big chunk of open land, and because they didn't farm. This was an incompatible with lifestyle of the white farmers and ranchers. While the tribe had adapted well into the introduction of the horse, the intrusion of white settlers in the war, and the devastation wrought upon by smallpox, malaria, influenza, measles, and other epidemics reduced the tribe by 70% from 6,000. See, they didn't even have that many people. Their tribe, 6,000 people to 1,800 over the course of the 19th century. I mean, we think, this is the tribe of the Nez Perce, there was 20, 30, 40,000 of them or something. No, there was only 6,000. The time they all got done, there was 1,800 of them left. That's such a small gene pool. In the end, the gene pool is even small.
But of those, there were women and children.
Yes.
They weren't exactly all warriors. They were women and children, and old people.
And yeah, exactly. Well, the U.S. government reflects the priorities and interests of the citizens, and those who do not align with its own ideals. The result can be greed, oppression, and injustice. Now, people, this is from the past. Remember how this is going to affect you in the future. The U.S. government reflects the priorities and interests of its citizens, and those that do not align with its own ideals means if you don't align with the ideals of the U.S. government, the result can be greed, oppression, and injustice. This is particularly true for interactions with a minority people who look, live, and believe differently. And it goes on about Black Americans that were enslaved and did not gain citizenship until 1868. See, so like I said, it's a lot of these things we can really look back and realize that, hey, there is nothing that we can fight it. We can't fight the government has its own priority. If you have a conflict with the government, it is going to come down upon you. There is no redemption, a long and sad tale of thievery, murder, revenge, war, betrayals, many needless deaths of people from both cultures. Yes. And we're going to, it's surrounded by remnants.
Thievery and murder. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, it says how these trials and tribulations were, resonate with more than just that. It's, all the stuff in the Bible. These days, extremists and state governments decry wokeness, seek, suppress, distort, or even deny the truth about our shared history and systematic failures as school kids can't handle it, or might be brainwashed into hating their own culture and heritage. Boy, I've heard that one before. Anyway, we're going to skip a bunch of this stuff. And, you know, people, go look this stuff up. You know, look up his speeches, things like that. Because it was quite the thing. Like I said, these people started out, you know, they met Lewis and Clark, and within 60 some odd years, they were being conquered and pushed out of their land. Can you imagine that? Hey, look, it's the first white man. I remember seeing the first white man. Now I'm an old man, and they want to. They're everywhere, and they're gonna take our land. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but look at that first. Go back to that.
Yeah.
Zoom in. Look at that first line. Nez Perce had guaranteed land that was given to them. What?
Yeah.
In an 1855 treaty. It was given to them. No, wait. It was already theirs.
Yeah.
So there are statements like this that automatically it's, oh, they were given a bunch of land. What was the big deal? No, you dummy. Their land was stolen, and they were given their back, you know, they were pushed into their backyard and said, stay there, you know.
Yeah, we're going to...
And the white settlement increased, because the Nez Perce had been guaranteed land to live on. Here, you move over here because we got all these white people going to move out here. But so that first sentence just riles me up, you know. But to this day, people go, oh, yeah, they were given land. No problem. It was a treaty back in the day, you know. Why are they mad? Why are they pissed off? You dummy.
Yeah, that's, and, you know, as the white settlements increased, their land they were given shrank and shrank and shrank. And then when they refused to go, like Chief Joe says, he refused to go. He says, I'm not going to go. This is the land where my fathers and mothers died. And, you know, their bones are here, and I'm not giving it up. And then finally the government came in and said, we're going to send the troops in, and we're going to make you move. You know, we gave you some land over yonder there, and you guys can go all over there. And then I'm sure he's saying, but that's just a little chunk over there. And the government's saying, well, there's thousands of acres over there, but you got to share it with all your other Indian friends, you know, the Walla Wallas, the Cayuse, the Salish, you know, you got to share it.
In air quotes, you know?
Yeah, your other Indians. And I mean, if I was them, I would be pissed. I'd be like, what do you mean? You know, you're telling me what? Yeah, I would be mad. I tell you, it would be really, really hard to just. Well,
one of the things that, you know, here recently I spoke about it, and it might have been last year at the tail end, that the state of Oklahoma has recognized the territorial lands of the native folks and the original treaties going back then. But the issue is half of the state of Oklahoma is Indian territory. Even part of the state capital and all other kinds of stuff are all on Indian land. Yep. And so it's like now, you know, it's like the Indians been pushed around all this time by the white man. And now the Indians are going, wait a minute, but I'm sorry, we own this piece of property over here. Y'all are fussing about. And they're like, okay. But they're going to war, but it's in court. But the court decided against the white man and said, nope, sorry, you cannot infringe anymore. What it is, and still what it is out in South Dakota around the Badlands and the El Presidentes, Mount Rushmore. But when they found gold back in those days, they started running, you know, it was one of those things with Custer. You know, he was one of the first ones out there to start running them off the land. And they're going, wait a minute, you gave this to us. And he was like, well, you move over a little bit. But
the thing with
in South Dakota, around the Badlands, white man is still trying to chase the Indian Native Americans out of their land and cheat them to this day.
To this day. No, I agree. Exactly. I mean, what happened later on, let's see, I'm going to show you some of this. So, this was the territory they gave. This was the 1855 treaty, the big green, pink spot. And then they broke it up and they gave them two little spots and said, okay, here's one group of Indians and here's the other near Nez Perce Indians. If you want to live here, you got to all move over here in this little area. Well, what happened though, later on, some white man figured out, like in Oklahoma is they said, these Indians, there's not many of them. And we're going to give them all 160 acres. That's more than enough for one man to have 160 acres, right?
Yep, but back in the day, it was 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to give each Indian 160 acres. But here's the thing. All the Indians had died off. Like I said, there wasn't no 6,000 Indians anymore. There was 1,800. And now you're giving each Indian 160 acres, and there's only 1,800 Indians. Now your land shrinks. It literally shrinks down even more because it's like, oh, I got 160 acres to myself. But before we had, 100,000 acres or 200,000 or 300,000 acres for our whole reservation. And the white man says, well, but I'll give you, 160 acres all for yourself. Like, this is where the Indian didn't understand.
Yeah, but you know what? And I don't know when it is, but I had a friend of mine. He's passed a good 8 years now, but Osage Indian from Oklahoma. And every year he used to get his oil money. And so because he was still a member of the tribe, he would go back every year or so and visit with the family and all. But so the white man moved on to the Indian land and went, we can drill a hole here. And, this black stuff will come out of the land. And they were like, well, So, but over the years, guess what? The natives have prospered very much from that oil underneath their feet. Yeah. And, now that it's like, everything is opened back up about that. So, and some of them have, been able to use that money wisely. So I'm proud of those tribes, like taking back the, fighting in court for their land, their treaty lands, and having that restored. So, hopefully they don't have to be like us, but they can stop being stupid.
Well,
making bad decisions,
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's rough, and I feel bad for them, because a lot of these treaties they sign, like the one for the Badlands in South Dakota and stuff with the Sioux, these treaties had so many loopholes in it that the Indians didn't understand, because it's like, oh, well, we can, it says in the treaty that we can go in there and, without a military group. So this group of people are going to go in and they may have guns and stuff, but they're not military. So it's okay. We're going to make a loophole that says that, if there's gold found, that we can use that area to mine some gold, but the Indians didn't understand that kind of stuff. And of course, they didn't understand that you have to make roads to get to that goal. They couldn't read the treaty in the first place. They had somebody interpreting it for them. That's all the bad stuff about it, So, of course, once they were on the warpath and they didn't go back to the reservation. Then they became, combatants, and then they were free for the rounding up and putting in basically in prison, or worse, getting shipped off to another state like Oklahoma or Florida, like the Apache did. These guys got shipped down to Kansas. The government really knew what it was doing. I mean, they weren't
because
stupid.
they even split up all the children.
Yes.
And sent them off to Presbyterian schools and Methodist schools. And I've heard from some Native Americans how the Methodist schools treated the Native children. Would smack them with rulers if they uttered an Indian word, or if it sounded like an Indian something. And I mean, just unbelievable how they were treated. They took them in, and here these young boys, especially, that grow their hair long, and they're proud of their ponytail and everything, and they go in there and whack it off.
That's right.
And that was sacred to them. So here's a young man who's really confused. He's lived with this all his life, and here's the white man say, "You can't have your hair no more." Bam. Now, I mean, to most people that don't mean nothing, but to folks who who growing their hair long is sacred, and it's like the longer the hair is, it's like an antenna to the spirit world.
That's right.
The Creator. And so here's this young kid that's had his hair cut off, and there goes his antenna to the Creator. He's been wiped out, washed out, and otherwise humiliated, Yep. And it was a church group that did it.
Yeah, well, here we go. Look at this. There's plenty of pictures of it too. Look at this. Here's all the Native children, whack their hair off, put uniforms on them, and there you go. There's all the future children. You made them look like white people. Look at that. They don't even look like natives anymore. They show up like this, and then they end up like this. It looks like a white man schooling with native children. Look at everybody's head is shaven. And guess what? Look at this picture. Oh, you got the guy with the cross, and you got the native children there. And well, like I said, use religion, and you can convert people over and make them do what they want, And that's how it works. Look at here. Here's another picture of them. Native boarding schools. Here's the kids. They the boys got their hair chopped. The women got their hair chopped. Put on, white man clothes. Here's another picture. Let's make them look like white men. I mean, did these kids really want to look like a white man? I don't know.
And did cutting their hair actually make them feel like white people? I mean, just because their hair was cut, did they, oh, look, your hair's cut and you look nice, so we can take a picture. But to them, they're like, what the fudge? Why did you make me do this? Why is it important to you? It's important to them,
Yeah. I mean, look at here. Here's the same guy. Here's he with his normal. And then, I mean, even his face looks like a white man now, even in the pictures, from being inside instead of outside, chopped his hair all off, put a suit on him. I mean, I don't know, I just look at this and I think, geez, let him be who he wants to be. Right?
Yeah.
It says Indian children forced to assimilate at white boarding schools. That's got to be, a guy like this to, turn him like here's another picture. Look at, here, these are native children. These are Lakotas. And then, well, we assimilate them. Now look what they look like. it's terrible.
Don't they look nice?
Yeah, Native American lands are children. Wow. Here, well, look, my son came home, and now he looks like a white man. Here's my father with the long hair and his Indian ways, and here's my son. Looks like a white man. I don't even know if I mean, I feel bad.
And
I
let
feel,
me interject this. One of the things that I've read about in one of the books that I've got is that the mothers, after they were put on the reservations, would tell
yep,
their children, you must go to the white man's school.
yep,
And the kids were like, why? And they said, because you will not survive if you don't.
yep,
And
yep,
so a lot of, even though those children, really hated being there, their mothers and parents and grandparents and all, they had, told them, you have to do this to the young men. As a warrior, you must stand strong and go and do this so you can bring the knowledge of the white man back to your people.
yep.
To bring the knowledge of the white men back to your people. And I wish that there's somewhere I've got a book that's the passage where the mother is telling her son, you have to do this.
Yep.
So, but in this consternation of things going back and forth, and kids don't want to go, and and the religious people like, come on, you little brat,
Yep.
savages.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at this. I mean, they all, you can see they're natives, but they're all look uniform into white man school with a white teacher in the front teaching them how to be and do like a white man. It's sad. I can't even look at it anymore. I'm sorry.
Gee, that looks like a bunch of Catholics like me.
Yeah,
Well,
there
it
you
used
go.
to be.
There you go. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. Let's move on. Okay, what do you got for a story tonight?
Well, is it? Did you wrap it up? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I can't stand to look at the poor children turning in from a native to a white man, and it's just sad. Breaks my heart that it'd be like if China came over here and said, well, we conquered your country, and now you got to learn how to speak Chinese. You got to do like we do, and blah blah blah. There would be people who would fight against it. They wouldn't want to do it. Us older people like you and me, we would never conform. But what would they do? They would take the children, teach them how to be like them, learn their rules, their laws, their customs. And, they would be eating egg drop soup and, making chop suey. And we would be over there saying, no, I don't eat that. I eat eggs and bacon. That's how I live. I'm an American. No, you can't live like that if you want to survive.
Well, there's been a lot of we've talked about this before about the First Nation and the First Nations that were here, and where'd they come from? Well, there's a lot more information that says the Chinese were here long before possibly even Leif Erikson was here.
Oh yeah,
So now
yeah.
here's my thing about that. So the Chinese been over here long before the Spanish, long before the English, long before the French and all these other folks. And so one of these days, China's going to roll out this treaty that says, oh, by the way, we own half of this United States all the way over to the Mississippi. We got a contract. We bought it.
Yep.
And then people are going to go, what?
What?
But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they'd whip out something like that. But to the point, if it was, if it was first person who landed here were the victors, then we should all be speaking Chinese.
That's right. That's right. Like I said, it's crazy to think, but it's so true. We don't really know. Like I said, it wasn't that long ago that these natives were conquered, and we just go on about our days. Like I said, like nothing. We're walking on their land. We're doing all that stuff. They lived here first, and we oppressed them. And if anybody, the thing is someday we will be conquered too. And it might not be us. It might be our great grandkids or our great grandkids. But they will be conquered, and they will have to obey the new ruler that comes along.
But we're already doing that because they have a thing called eminent domain, and the government can come in and take whatever they want, period.
Yep.
If they say blah, 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 we want this thing here, and you go, but wait a minute, that's it.
Yep.
So in a lot of ways, things haven't changed at all.
We're living in the reservation right now. That's the point. If they come
I don't own this land I'm on, I rent it. I lease it while I'm alive.
Yep.
But into the red man seat, the whole United States was just open and belonged to everyone.
That's right. That's right.
Boy, that's a big difference. So, we've got a government that says, nah, it don't belong to any of yous, to where the native philosophy was, this land belongs to all of us. We are here in trust to, take care of this planet, to take care of Mother Earth. And white man still don't get it, but, that's of all these things we've been talking about. So I'm wrapping up the Nez Perce thing. Of all the things, Chief Joseph was the shaman dude. He kept running from him. Not that he was a coward. He just didn't see the point in fighting and killing more and losing more people. And so, but, he was the enlightened one.
Yeah.
But they couldn't see that. Even his own people disagreed with him on that. But in the end, he was the enlightened one because he was one of the last ones of his tribes.
Yep. Yeah.
So, but anyway, there are those people who fight and die, and there are folks who fight and find a way to live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And Chief Joseph did that, and his second fight, he continued his fight by speaking to people, and his words after over 100 years are still here with us. So that's sort of my philosophy. I will fight no more forever.
Forever. Yeah. No, I agree.
I wrapped it up.
Okay. What do you got going on here? What do we got tonight?
Well, I got a bunch of cards laid out here, but we got a story that should be up next. We still got time?
Yes.
Okay. Well, go to that same book, and we got another rabbit story.
Okay, what's it called?
Rabbit and the Moon Man. Ooh, we got astronauts in the story tonight.
That's right. Rabbit
Hang on a second.
I mean, I got it up before you got it up, huh?
No, I already had it here. Oops.
No, I mean, you didn't even tell me. I read your mind from that far away.
I got you. It's that ESP stuff going on, huh?
That's right.
Hang on a second.
Like right now, I'm going to do some ESPing. And I'm ESPing that Scotty boy is wearing shorts, not pants. I wonder if I'm right. Let me see. Am I correct or am I wrong?
I've already I've already chosen the cards for tonight, and there's 6 of them. So
Yep. China visited Americas in 1420, 2 years before the Vikings, with 1,000 in the year 1,000 as equals 10 years, something like that. Earliest proof China visit the Americas in 1420, 2 years before Vikings, I think, near the
lucky, some of the information that I just heard are like, nah, they were over here about like maybe like 850 to 900 kind of thing. That there was some really earlier people that came around over here, but that's sort of like, oh no, but they keep finding stuff, and they keep finding things in China that like, wait a minute, these guys went over and traded with people on the other side of this big ocean, holy mackerel. So, but anyway, yeah, 1420, they've been talking about that. That's not early enough. So just saying.
Yep.
I was surprised. I was like, what? Because we had talked about this before. And so when they were talking about the Chinese influence on the West Coast, cool beans.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, let me get my story up here.
You get your story up.
Thank you, Scotty boy. I'm not trying to correct you, but I was surprised that they'd come out with an earlier date. So our story for tonight.
That's all yours.
We're ready here? Okie dokie. Our story for tonight, Rabbit and the Moon Man. I'm still reading out of the same book, Glooskap's Country and Other Indian Tales, by Cyrus Macmillan, 1922. Our story, Rabbit and the Moon Man. Once long ago, Rabbit lived with his old grandmother deep in the Canadian forest, far from all other people. He was a great hunter, and all round, far and near, he laid snares and set traps to catch game for food. It was winter, and he caught many little animals and birds. He brought them home daily to feed himself and his old grandmother, and he was well pleased with his success. But after some weeks had passed, he was unable to catch any game. He always found his traps and snares empty, although many tracks were always around them, and there were many signs that animals were prowling about. He knew then that he was being robbed nightly, and that a thief was pilfering his traps. It was very cold, and the snow lay deep in the forest, and Rabbit and his old grandmother were in dire need of food. Every morning, Rabbit rose very early and hurried off to his traps, but always he found them empty, for the thief had been ahead of him. He was greatly puzzled, for he could not think who the thief was. At last one morning, after a new fall of snow, he found the mark of a long foot near his traps, and he knew it was the foot of the game robber. It was the longest footprint he had ever seen, long and narrow and very light, like a moonbeam. And Rabbit said, "Now I shall rise earlier in the morning, and I shall go to my traps ahead of the thief and take my game so that they will all be empty when he comes." Each morning he rose earlier to catch the thief, but the man of the long foot was always there before him, and his game was always gone. No matter how early Rabbit got up, the thief was always ahead of him, and his traps were always empty. So Rabbit said to his old grandmother, "The man of the long foot who robs my traps is always up ahead of me, no matter how early I rise. I will make a snare from a bowstring, and I will watch all this night, and I will surely catch him." He made a trap from a stout bowstring and set it beside his snares, and took the end of the bowstring some distance away to a clump of trees, behind which he hid. He hoped that the thief would step into the trap. Then he would pull the bowstring and tie him fast to a tree. He sat very quiet, waiting for the man of the long foot to appear. It was moonlight when he set out, but soon it grew very dark in the forest. The moon suddenly disappeared, but the stars were all shining on the white snow, and there were no clouds in the sky. And Rabbit wondered what had happened to the moon. He waited very still and a little frightened in the starlight. Soon he heard someone coming, sneaking stealthily through the trees. Then he saw a white light which dazzled his eyes. The light went towards the snares until it stopped just at the trap Rabbit had set. Then Rabbit pulled the bowstring, closed the trap as he had hoped, and tied the string fast to a tree. He heard sounds of a struggle, and he saw the white light move from side to side, but he knew that he had his prisoner fast, and that the man of the long foot was caught at last. He was much afraid of the white light, and he ran home as fast as he could and told his old grandmother that he did not know who he was, for he was too frightened to look. And his grandmother said, "You must go back and see who it is, and tell him he must stop robbing your snares." But Rabbit said, "I don't want to go until daylight, for the moon has gone down, and the forest is very dark." But his grandmother said, "You must go." So poor Rabbit, although he was very frightened by what he had seen, set out again for his traps. When he drew near to his snares, he saw that the white light was still shining. It was so bright that his eyes were dazzled, and he had to stop far from it. Then he approached nearer, but his eyes soon became very sore. There was a stream flowing beside him, and he bathed his eyes in the cold water, but it brought him no relief, and his eyes felt hot and red, and tears fell from them because of the dazzling light. Then he took great handfuls of snow and threw snowballs at the light, hoping thereby to put it out. But when the snowballs came nearer to the light, they melted and fell down like rain. Then, with his eyes still smarting, Rabbit, in his rage, scooped up great handfuls of soft black mud from the bottom of the stream, and forming it into balls, he threw them with all his force at the white light. He heard them strike something with a dull thud, and he heard loud yells from the prisoner, the man of the long foot, behind the shining light. Then a voice came from the light saying, "Why did you snare me? Come and untie me at once. I am the man in the moon. It is near the morning, and before dawn I must be on my way home. You have already spotted my face with mud, and if you do not loose me at once, I shall kill all of your tribe." Poor Rabbit was frightened than before, and he ran home and told his grandmother what had happened. And his grandmother was also very frightened, for she thought that no good could come of it. And she told Rabbit to go back at once and untie the man in the moon, for the night was almost spent, and the dawn would soon be breaking. So poor Rabbit, trembling in his fear, went back to his traps. From a great distance he cried, "I will untie you if you will never again rob my snares, and if you will never come back to earth." And then the prisoner in the trap promised and said, "I swear by it, by my white light." Then Rabbit approached very carefully. He had to shut his eyes and grope his way because of the bright light, and his lip quivered because of the great heat. At last he rushed in and cut the bowstring snare with his teeth, and the man in the moon hurried on his way, for he could already see the dawn in the east. But Rabbit was almost blinded while he was about it, and his shoulders were badly scorched. And ever since that time, Rabbit blinks and his eyelids are pink, and water runs from his eyes when he looks at a bright light, and his lip always quivers, and his shoulders are yellow even when he wears his white winter coat, because of the great light. And the heat on the winter night long ago, when he loosed the man in the moon from the snare. And since that night, the man in the moon has never come back to earth. He stays at his task in the sky, lighting the forest by night, but he still bears on his face the marks of the black mud which Rabbit threw at him. And sometimes for several nights he goes away to a quiet place where he tries to wash off the mud, and then the land is dark. But he never succeeds in cleaning himself, and when he comes back to his work, the marks of Rabbit's mud balls are still upon his shining face. The end. How about that for a story?
That was a good one. The mud balls are on his face. Those are the craters in the moon, aren't they?
Yeah.
Huh, cool.
And next week, our story will be Rabbit and the Indian Chief.
Cool.
Cool.
Let's see.
So there we go. Now, have y'all picked out what cards you think I picked?
Yeah, I want to show cards. I want to see who gets closest. Come on, everybody. You got to get in on this.
Well, you don't have to, but...
Well, class participation.
Yeah.
You know, everybody loves a good class participation.
Well, this is sort of a practice in ESP.
That's
it's
true.
Like, not what do you think it is, but what do you think? I'm looking at them, So I've got lizard. We had lizard last week.
Mm-hmm.
We've got coyote. buffalo. Now, so far, all of these are straight up. The next one is grouse, the eternal spiral. And I was thinking about grouse the other day, and I was like, the spiral, the dance, yeah. Moose. Now, that's 5 cards, all straight up. And the last one out is owl, upside down. So, how about them apples? Now, let me get the book. Let me get something to drink. Anybody close?
Let's see. I'm still trying to figure out how to spell grouse. There we go. Okay, I got it. Let's see. What did everybody have? Computer's running a little slow. There we go. Lizard. Who got lizard?
Yeah, lizard's back again from last week, which is interesting. A lizard is about the dreaming. So as the story goes,
Truth Seeker said nothing here.
He's under
John
a rock.
Price had rabbit, owl. Oh, he's got owl right. Skunk, monkey, and pig. Nope, there's no monkey, pig. Secret Truth says frog, turtle, snake, bear, bee. Nope. Lucky had dragonfly, beaver, and deer. None of the above.
Nope.
Scotty Boy was grasshopper, bear, eagle, deer, crow, and salmon. None of the above. I don't think there is a salmon. Come on, What are you thinking? He's a fish guy. You know, I don't think we have any fish cards.
Only the dolphin and the whale.
And the whale, yes. And those are mammals. They're not fish.
Well, that's true.
So, well, there you go. You got to pick mammals like owl, crow, raven. Think like an Indian. You know, you're going to pick a badger, a moose, an elk, a deer.
Well, now to the, the Nazca folks, being in the Northwest, they would have had a lot more about fish.
No, probably.
Because, of all the fish in the streams and stuff. I mean, they just would have had more about fish. But anyway, so lizard is about dreaming. And lizard was underneath a rock, hiding from the noonday sun, and snake crawled in with him. And snake was like, can I rest here? And a lizard was, yeah, okay. And snake said, well, how do you know it's going to be all right? And lizard said, because I was dreaming you. And the snake said, well, I thought you was asleep. And lizard says, no, I was dreaming. There's a difference. Where is it? You see, when I won't eat me today because I dreamed you. He dreamed to the snake. He said, you're not going to eat me. And lizard medicine is the shadow side of reality, where your dreams are reviewed before you decide to manifest them physically. Lizard may be telling you to pay attention to your dreams and their symbols. Make a dream log if you need to. If lizard dreamed a space in your cards today, it may be time to look and see what might be following along behind you. Is it your fears, your future trying to catch up to you, or is it the part of you that wants to ignore your own weaknesses and humaneness? That's an interesting one. Now, Coyote, number 13. Now, we all know the story about Coyote. He's always you making a mess for himself. And That's what, that's how Coyote learns his lesson. He's the trickster. Coyote has many magical powers, but they do not always work in his favor. His own trickery fools him. He is the master trickster who tricks himself. Contained within trickster's medicine is the humor of the ages. The cosmic joke is not just on ourselves, but on everyone else if they are following Coyote or who have strong Coyote medicine. So, snooze time is over if you have pulled the Coyote medicine card. Ooh, so Lizard is telling you take the dream time to dream what you're going to do before you do it. And Coyote's saying snooze time is over. So your glass house may crash to the ground at any moment. On the other hand, you may not be conscious of your own pathway of foolishness. You may have conned yourself, your family, your friends, and whoever else might be around you that you truly are doing the right thing when you're absolutely going backwards. If you have Coyote medicine, you may use it to make stuffy old fogies lighten up and smile a bit. So, Coyote, snooze time is over. Next one up is Buffalo, number 19. Prayer and abundance. In the Lakota tradition, it was the white buffalo calf woman who brought the sacred pipe so that the people, to teach the people and taught them how to pray. The divine energy of the Great Spirit is made through the pipe. All animals are sacred, but in many traditions, white buffalo is the most sacred. Buffalo was the major source of sustenance for the Plains Indians. It gave meat for food and hide for clothing and etc. Because of its desire to give gifts that its body provided, and because of its willingness to be used on earth for the highest good before entering the hunting grounds of the spirit. Buffalo did not readily stampede and ran from hunters. To use buffalo medicine is to smoke the pipe in a sacred manner and to give praise for the richness of life to be shared, because all things are equal in the eyes of the Creator. Buffalo medicine is a sign that you achieve nothing without the aid of the Great Spirit, and that you must be humble enough to ask for that assistance, and then be grateful for what you receive. Good medicine, yes. The next one up is grouse, and it's about the sacred spiral, around and around and around and around. 34. Yep, sacred spiral. Sacred spiral is also one of the oldest symbols for personal power. When you think of grouse medicine, visualize a whirlpool or even a tornado. Many Plains Indian tribes dance the grouse dance to honor these birds. The whirling dervishes of certain Sufi orders are masters of the spiral dance and can transcend to higher states of awareness through the repetition of this sacred movement, going around and around and around. It's amazing. It really is well, you can transcend, I can tell you. If you've chosen grouse medicine in your cards, undertake a meditation on the various qualities of movement within your world. Because as the grouse dances, you watch. Begin by visualizing the sun as one member of a huge group of stars swirling in the massive pinwheel shape of the Milky Way. Many spiritual disciples ask that you cease all external movement in order to recognize the inner life. Grouse medicine, however, is an invitation to the dance. So instead of sitting there and meditating, get up and move. And guess what? What does Coyote say? Get up. So there's two. There's get up, wonder what's coming. The next card up is moose. So dance in a circle, get up and move and thank the spiral, the sacred spiral, and the creator. Moose's self-esteem. Moose is the largest member of the deer family and has great strength. The call of the male moose is an awesome thing to hear. His pride is his maleness, and his desire to share his seed with the moose cow displays of his sense of self-esteem. This tell the world trait contains a joyfulness which only comes with a sense of accomplishment. So grouse is telling you to move and dance along with coyote, and moose here is telling you that the only way to feel good about yourself is through a sense of accomplishment. There is no greater joy than a job well done. The wisdom woven throughout a scenario is that creation constantly brings forth new ideas and further creation. Let me read that one again. The wisdom woven throughout the scenarios of life is that creation constantly brings forth new ideas and further creation. Very interesting. Moose is telling us that joy should be shouted with pride. Shout it with pride. Now, owl is the last one upside down, number 21. Owl is deception. Owl medicine is symbolically associated with clairvoyance and astral projection and such. Owl is called the night eagle on several medicine wheels used by the American Indians of North and South America. Traditionally, owl sits in the east, the place of illumination. Owl is oftentimes the medicine of sorcerers and witches. If owl is your medicine, you will be drawn towards magical practices. If you pulled the owl card, you're being asked to use your powers of keen, silent observation. But if the owl is upside down, you have been greatly deceived by either yourself or someone else. The message is to befriend the darkness. And wait, I'm sorry, I skipped a line. You may need to aid yourself, and you should be praying and asking the Great Spirit for guidance. The message is to befriend the darkness inside yourself. Look deeply, and soon the bright light of dawn will illuminate you. Then ask yourself, what are you in the dark about? How and by whom are you being deceived? Have you been lied to by yourself? Are you being greatly deceived or just slightly deceived? Owl tells you to keep an eye on your property and your loved ones. Remember that Owl is always asking, who? Very interesting. So we got the dream time and Coyote getting up and doing stuff. So Lidzer's telling you to, use that dream time, but to dream what you're fixing to do. And then Buffalo's like, go ahead and follow along and do it too. And Grouse says, dance the sacred dance. Moose says to bellow it out for everyone to hear. And Owl says to look behind you. You may have been deceived. So there we go. It's good all the way up to the end. I mean, a warning that, somebody might be cheating you or deceiving you. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. So, none of us can answer that one except ourselves. So hopefully if somebody is doing that to you, you'll catch them.
Yep. Good words for tonight.
And a good story too.
Good story too. Yes, I totally agree.
And guess what? I did it in the same time. I'm getting good at this.
It was good. We got 3 minutes to go. How about that? You gonna have a show tonight?
Maybe. I'm really tired. I had a doctor's appointment today and some other stuff, and my blood pressure is doing good, and they changed my medicine around a little bit, and I go to the heart doctor next week, and so forth. But yep, so I'm still breathing.
That's good.
Still here for another week.
I see they took down one of your shows this last week or so. What's up with that? What did you say?
Oh, I did a live stream, and when I finished it, have to use my cell phone, and it goes into saved, and then it lists my videos, right? And then I have to go in there because using my cell phone, it will save the video to private. So I have to go in and edit it and set it to public. So I've done this several times now. It ain't nothing to do. So I went to it flipped the screen, and I went up. My eyes were tired, didn't look, and I clicked on it, and it was like, wait a minute, this ain't the video. The video never got saved.
Wow.
It never made it, but it says in my thing, it says the video. It says I did a video, but there is no video. So I don't know what YouTube is doing for me. So
Interesting.
It just has a tendency to just keep me out of it,
Yep, that's for sure. That is for sure.
Thank you, Peachy Keen.
There you go. Yeah. Lifting young Hawkeye up here with smoke and prayers. And thank you. Anyway.
My dimples. Thank you for my youngness.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I'll be having another show on Saturday night, so y'all join me there. And, got lots to do. I think it's going to be gardening time. So lots to plant and things like that. And maybe have a video tomorrow on my accomplishments. I'll get the drone out and have it follow me around a little bit. And who knows what'll happen. I'm taking the day off tomorrow, doing a little vacation time of working at home, and gonna just enjoy it. It's gonna have about 4 nice days, and who knows where it's gonna take me. So be ready for an adventure. That's all I can say.
Good deal.
Yeah. So with that, life looks good.
I want to say that all of y'all out there, I continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from our Creator and from our friends and neighbors too. So thank you all.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, everybody, go out and do something nice for your neighbor. Make sure that you plant your own garden. 1 seed, 1 tomato plant. Do something this year. Plant your own victory garden. There you go. Take a piece out of history and plant your own victory garden, and things like that. Growing things is a good thing. Remember the things we talked about with tonight's show. Go look up some of those speeches. Go look up the Nez Perce, very interesting tribe. If you live out in the West Coast area, Washington, Oregon, up in the mountains, there's where they were actually at. You are living the dream. I'm sure they would have loved to go back to their own land, and I hope that some of them actually did. With that, everybody, thank you. Chloe, Witchy Moon, Peachy Keen, Scotty Boy, Lucky Stone, John Price. I hope I haven't missed an Elderberry. I hope you're all sticking with me. Seeker of Truth, too. I know Veronica was in here, and a whole bunch of others. I can't remember who was Deborah L. Smith, Mary Wins, Nina the Mystic, and Savage Lee. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we spend one more time. And this was 172. We'll be back with 173. With that, everybody remember to go out and be the frequency you want to receive, because we love you all so much. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.